Therefore, on our political affairs program tonight, we are assessing Africa's role in fighting Africa's role to fight or manage climate change and its effect on the lives of its people. We are fortunate to be joined by two personalities. First one is a young man that I have known from afar. He is a young climate change ambassador on the continent of Africa in person of Cedric Zelu, all from Ghana. And then we also do have an environmental economist. His name is Dr. Daniel Kwabena Trifo, who is an environmental economist. So, ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome onto the show. Doctor.
Thank you very much, my good friend. Thank you very much. And nice being on your show.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. It's been a while. And then I believe everything is nice in Ghana. It's been a long time since some of us came home, and we've been trying our very best to come and then also build our nation. Today we're going to be discussing climate change. But before that, let me also involve Mr. Cedric. Mr. Cedric, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
I know your video has been a problem, but we will still have this program, and then maybe later in the future, I will come again and still discuss climate change.
Sure.
Let me begin with Doctor. Doctor, tell me, what is climate change?
Right. Climate change is simply the increase in greenhouse gases over and above what is required, and that is allowing, more heat to be absorbed in the atmosphere. We can, especially look at the persistent leading to a persistent change in the climatic factors like the temperature, like the rainfall, like the sea level rise, which is affecting every aspect of economic activity. So simply what I can say is that we can look at climate change as a persistent increase or change compared with what other countries are doing. So just that if we want to help fight the issue of climate change.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Let me also call Cedric. Can you hear me? Cedric. Can you hear me, Cedric? I think Cedric has gone off the system.
No, I can hear you.
Cedric, you can hear me.
Yes, I can.
In Doctor's submission, the statistics shows that Africa has contributed just 3 to 4% to what is affecting the global change. Should Africa be concerned about global change?
There is every reason why Africa should be concerned about climate change, because rightly so, Doctor have made the point that though we contribute between 3 to 4% to the cost of the global crisis, it is instructive to add that we suffer the most. When you look at all the consequences of climate change, whether it is drought, whether it is floods, whether it is sea level rise, heat waves, all those consequences, we those in Africa bear the brunt the most. And the consequences hit us in a manner that threatens our lives, threatens our humanity. And it is for that reason that we must be concerned. We must be concerned because climate change is a topic for all discipline. When I say climate change is a topic for all discipline, I mean climate change affects our water supply. It affects our food, it affects our health, our transport system, and our very being. And so if there's anybody anywhere in Africa who thinks that there's any topic that concerns him or herself or that affects his or her food, water, sanitation, health, and that person must not be concerned about, then it calls for alarm. Look at the case in point about COVID. When COVID hit, look at how the entire world shook its grounds, and look at how Africa responded.
Mm.
Climate change is in triple of that. climate change is in quadruple of that. But just that some of the consequences of climate change are not as dramatic as we see. So to answer your question, it is a yes. There's no doubt that we ought to be concerned about it, and we ought to come and provide what doctor said, adaptation capacity and resilient mechanism to ensure that we will be able to address the consequences of the crisis.
Doctor, thank you so much, Cedric. Doctor,
Yes.
how effective is your communication with the citizenry of Ghana and Africa about the effect of climate change?
Right. When it comes to communicating the issue of climate change and its impact to the populace, maybe I can say that not much is being done in that area. Okay, at the overt level, at the global, at the macro level. But I can see that many people are feeling the impact. They are not better able to attribute it to climate change, but the impact is being felt. If you go to the northern part of this country, you know, right? Because if you look at Ghana, for example, Ghana has participated, and of course, all the African countries has participated in the COP discussions. Okay, the Conference of Parties discussions for the past years. We are now having COP 27, I think so. So Ghana has participated. I mean, the Africa has participated in all the discussions concerning mitigation, concerning adaptation of climate change. If you look at the Paris Agreement, it will still go on. So what I can say is that when it comes to really communicating the issue, right, to the people, not much has been done. But in terms of participating at the macro level, a lot more is being done. I mean, I think in 2017, somewhere in Swedru, we had
looking at climate change as a global phenomena. All states, all countries, all continents, all presidents is on their budget. How come that when it comes to Africa, when it comes to the micro level, enough has not been done? Is it because administration there's no budget from the administration in terms of finance to push that? And I mean,
I will start with the premise that when you fight climate change at the macro level, you are looking at mitigation approaches. You're looking at approaches that concerns addressing the greenhouse gases. So the government will be talking to Tullow Oil, Total Ghana, and those big corporations who are contributing badly, to the increase of greenhouse gases. But when you come to the micro level, we are talking about adaptation approaches. It is those approaches that concerns how people are able to be resilient to addressing the climate crisis. But the problem at the micro level is that we are unable to connect the nexus between climate change and how it affects people. We are still living, unfortunately, in the H-stone mentality when it comes to issues about the climate. The doctor said here that, someone said the girls, annoyed, and for that matter, the water level has risen. It is true. Even here in my own community, a young boy, age 12, died when the place was flooded. And an old woman was blamed for it, that she is a witch and she killed that boy. But when myself and my team investigated, we realized that when it flooded, the gutters that are open gutters, it gets flooded and kids love to play outside, even in the rain. So when these kids play, they no longer know or can tell where the gutters are. And so this kid mistakenly fell into a ditch. And the force of this water, the force of the moving water, just ran the kid into a bigger gutter, and that was the end. That is not superstition. That is not witchcraft. However, the family attributed that to witchcraft. So the point must be made that we are unable to connect the impact of climate change to our lives, so that when we are able to make this connection, the nexus, to be able to create the awareness, to make the farmer understand that it is because of the change in the weather pattern That is why it is not raining as expected. And that is why the amount of water or rain that falls is not as expected, or the dry season, is coming too early. And this is what is causing your food yield, okay, not to increase or to be as productive as you want your farm to be. When we made that connection and the farmer knows that this is the reason, then the farmer is able to address issues from adaptation approaches. When we made the case to people that look, when the air is polluted, when the greenhouse gases, pollute the atmosphere, and we breathe in these gases, it affects our respiratory system, it affects our lungs, it affects our heart, it affects our kidney. And so, if you have 70 years to live and you are breathing this toxic air every day of your life, then to some extent you should expect a decrease in number of years. Instead of living 70 years, maybe you'll be reaching 65 or 62. But when people get sick, and they have heart diseases and they have respiratory diseases, what do we ascribe it to? Oh, nutu mommy, nimokosumole nutumo, ewomo miniba, agbele. And for those who don't hear Ga, what I said in Ga is that people ascribe issues like, this guy is working hard, he's at a company, people don't like him, so they've killed him. Somebody, the water we are drinking, this toxic run into our water bodies. Look at River
Okay.
Pra, look at River Ankobra. Our water bodies, are saturated with all sort of pollution. This is the same water that people drink. And so when we make the connection about how people are affected by the climate change, then people are able to wake up. And when they wake up, then we are able to make the education adaptive to the approaches. I am currently, embarking on a $10,000 project in my community at Abraka. And all I'm doing is to go to people's houses and make the singular case that the causes of the problem that they face through floods, through skin burn, heat waves, are all as a result of climate change. And when I begin to make this case, it now dawns on people. People are now awakening to reality. And so when you are able to competently describe or define the
Yeah.
problem, then you're able to, find solution. Doctor is here. He is an academia. And the first question that the academia will tell you is that you must be able to define your problem. What is your problem? What are you researching into? What is the research question? So we, at the micro level, we are unable to carry the message where people can make the case, the nexus between climate change and the health, climate change and food, climate change and even what do you call it, water supply, climate change and respiratory system and what have you. And so people are not able to narrow down the discussion to that level. So I submit to you that once we are able to do that, then people will be awakened. Then you have individuals, you have teachers,
Right.
you have pastors, you have imams who
Right.
will be able to use their speaking opportunities, radio presenters to talk to people on certain adaptation measures. Then we'll be
Right.
able to carry the message on the micro level.
Thank you so much, Cedric, for that thorough detail. Doctor,
Yes.
Dr. Daniels is an environmental economist. Doctor, I want us to move one step further onto the African continent. I know you've been fighting, working hard, traveling all over the world, going for symposiums, etc. Is there anybody that represents Africa when it comes to fighting climate change? For example, we know there is this oil, most of the time there is this oil spilled in the Delta Basin in Nigeria, and then some volcanic eruptions, etc., etc. But can you throw more light if there is a body that is representing Africa when it comes to climate change, for the fight for climate change, please?
Oh, well, the on climate change comes to international global. Say Africans, has not been involved, maybe like the problem is that when it comes to mitigation, when it comes to adaptation, we are ill-resourced. Okay, if you look at the whole climate change discussions, mitigation, it's a global benefit. So what I mean is that when you do something to reduce the emission of CO2 gases, the whole world benefits. Okay, the whole world. So mitigation is global, but adaptation is local. For example, if your gutters are not deep and you decide to make them deep so that it can absorb more water and reduce floods, you locally benefit. So if you look at the whole international discussion on climate change, more is on mitigation than adaptation. So you see more money going into mitigation because it's global and adaptation. And that is where sometimes Africans will make a mistake. In fact, I the national
And then let me just read some few text messages and then we'll continue with the program. Mr. Isaac Osei says that food for thought, we are all involved. We need to play our part to protect the environment, the atmosphere from activities that leads to global warming. And then Salem Achu is also saying that this discussion came at the right time. I'll keep it up. Thank you. And then, okay, Cedric.
Yes, hello.
In the United States, there's always a representative on the board. In Ghana, we call it councils of state, to advise the president on climate change. Do we have a thing like that when it comes to presidency, the administration? Not only Ghana, but other nations in Africa. Do we have a representative? Cedric, this one is to you.
By mentioning the U.S. example, I should say that the U.S. is a leader in climate change affairs. That is why when they pulled out of the Paris Agreement, the world was alarmed. But Biden has reconnected the U.S. to, the climate discourse, even at the COP level. And I should also say that whilst I was at COP, I encountered the first minister of climate change from Argentina. He happens to be a minister in the whole of Latin America that is appointed to address issues of climate change. That is to bring the discussion to Ghana and Africa. That in Africa, I am yet to see anywhere on the continent where a minister has been appointed directly to address issues of climate change. Maybe it is an advocacy that myself and Doc and maybe you would have to champion. But there is an example coming from Nigeria where the Nigerian government is trying to establish the Climate Council. And that to a very great extent speaks volume of the readiness of how Nigeria is taking the climate agenda very serious. Here in Ghana, I should say that even though in Ghana we do not have a climate council or a climate ministry, I can say that the issues about climate change or the agenda of climate change is well spread across few department or ministry. Yeah, I mentioned the Ministry of Science and Technology, the Ministry of Natural Resources, and departments such as the Forestry Commission, NADMO, and a number of institutions are aggressively pursuing the agenda. So yes, I agree that we have a number of bodies that are working collectively to address issues of climate change. But I think your concern in the case of Ghana would have to border on to what extent will these spread out activities be coordinated to ensure that we have a coherent and sort of some focal, space in addressing the climate change. So that is an agenda we have to lead as a policy that we have to push to ensure that we will have more of a harmonized leadership in this approach. But then notwithstanding, I should admit that there are a number of organizations that are working, that are represented, that are advising the president, either this current president or the past president, on issues about climate change. Our former president, John Dramani Mahama, happens to be a high-level ambassador, when he was in leadership, because he, usually participated in activities of COP and has contributed greatly to that. So to firm up this point, I should say that there are a number of young people who are also, working so hard trying to influence government policy at the community level, at the assembly level, and even engaging in stakeholder engagement in terms
Yeah.
of influencing leadership. So,
Right.
yes, we are doing a number of things as a country, but for the citizens to have some kind of, blueprint, or to have some kind of expectation that government is championing climate change, I think that I would like to use your platform. I would like to
Sure.
use this platform to call on government to, as a matter of urgency, establish a climate council.
Sure.
Yes,
Thank you
establish a
so
climate
much.
council to coordinate this effort. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We will all try our very best to push it from wherever we are. Doctor, I know you want to say something, but before, let me just chip in with a question. Do you think we should add climate change onto our students' curriculum, educational curriculum, since, yeah, doctor?
Yes, yes. Oh, yes, we need to do that. And I think something is being done in that direction, right?
Okay.
I must say that there is a national climate change committee, right? And when it goes down to grassroots, it will change,
Right.
climate change. So it suggests that having making sure that children do know that they're interested in money, get this money, education, awareness creation, explaining to the people and allowing the people to make a buy-in that this is the norm, this is what's supposed to be done, is the way to go. So I think that we have to go to that level so that we would really be able to achieve the benefits of
If it's November, you should start experiencing the Hamilton, or you should start experiencing.
It's not at the macro level, but the real implementation, as my colleague said, is at the what? At the micro level. And that is where the effort should be. So you're right that we need to really have this in our curriculum.
Yeah. Thank you so much. We really need to have this in our curriculum because I remembered when I was a lad in the secondary school, I did geography. And my geography tutor told me that climate changes after every 30 years. He said it. So the climate will change after every 30 years. And I remember those days when we were growing up, if it's November, you should start experiencing the Hamilton, or you should start experiencing the Christmas, whatever. But now, if even December, we don't see the Hamilton, and it's these are the evidence that the whole world is changing. Savik, you still there?
Yeah.
Okay. Hold on, Mr. Daniels, you wanted to say something? Mr. Daniel,
No,
you
it's
wanted to say
okay.
something? Yeah.
No, it's okay.
So,
you can go on.
Right. Savik, are you still there? Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm here.
Savik, about 3 years ago, the president of the United States, President Donald Trump, had to pull out from the climate change. How did you take that as a student of championing climate change globally, going for symposiums, etc., etc.? What happened to you? What hit you when you got to know that the leading nation like United States had to just pull out? What happened to you?
It came to me as the greatest shock of modern day leadership, because the United States for a very long time has been leading the way in terms of global affairs and global development, and most importantly, climate change. And the US has provided not only funding, but a lot of technical expertise, that would support mitigation and adaptation approaches. And so to pull out of the Paris Agreement was a threat to all that world leaders had done, to that time, to be able to harmonize effort, global effort, and political will in addressing the crisis. Because to pull out will mean that they are pulling out their funds, it will mean they are pulling out their resources, and it will mean they are pulling out their best practices. And I look at somebody like Al Gore, former vice president of the United States, who has been a champion of climate change, who has gone to almost every part of the world leading this space. And I followed him as a young climate ambassador nearly all the way. And so when that message came, it hit me very, very hard. And so I decided to try to investigate, to understand why Donald Trump leadership will bring the world to such a reverse gear. And even though it was unfortunate, one would think that Donald Trump was looking at issues about sustainability, issues about his country's growth, and issues about how America can survive. Because the point is that the country had a large amount of coal, and most of these giant companies that are flaring gases are in the United States. And so, for Donald Trump, who happens to be a businessman, thinking about how the US will give away its power in terms of global production, will give away its power in terms of resource, in terms of the coal, in terms of how to power the engines, and knowing very well that it can take this America some years to move to clean energy. He felt that I felt that he was not in the position to embrace that shock. He was not in the position to be able to take the bull by the horn, because the truth must be made that when you move to clean energy, it is
Mm.
not going to be a free ride. When
Right.
you move to clean energy harvesting, solar, wind power, it is not going to be a smooth, because the sun does not shine every day.
Mm.
The sun doesn't shine every day, and the wind doesn't blow every time. So there is also a question about how sustainable our clean energy system is and what happens with disruption. Let me give you a case in point. When we when the Russia, you know, this Russia-Ukraine war, let me put it that way so that I don't see him as making point that are not necessary. The Russia-Ukraine war has really questioned our target of climate target or climate goals.
Mm.
As soon as the Russia-Ukraine war started, we saw a depletion, in the flow of fuel of oil from
Mm.
Russia, from Ukraine to all other parts of the world. What did we see? We saw countries now reversing back to coal. Germany announced that they are reversing back to coal. Why? Because they have abundance of coal right there beneath their feet. And if the Russian-Ukraine war will not, provide oil, they will not sit there and die. That is a question about the sustainable development goals. It is a question of how do we ensure to
Mhm.
provide for today's needs without questioning or without inhibiting future generations to provide for their own needs. So when we addressing climate change, when we say that we are moving to clean energy, we say we are moving to solar, we are moving to all the other sources of energy, how do we ensure that whilst moving to solar, whilst moving to wind power and all those things, how do we ensure that current global production will
Yeah.
not be affected? How do we ensure we continue to feed human beings, we continue to clothe people, we continue to build houses? Because look, the world must move on.
Yes.
And the Mozart Wood media must know that the world must still be moving on whilst we address climate change. So I think
Right.
that it was these issues, this dilemma, that influenced Donald Trump to pull out of the Paris Agreement, so that when he continues to move on with the production of oil and coal, he will not be blamed for, you know, having signed to the agreement and doing contrary. But clearly, to all of us, it was
Yeah.
retrogressive, it
Right.
was a shame, and it was a reverse gear in the face of
Right.
global, politics and global diplomacy. But thanks to, the people of America, and thanks to the persuasion of diplomacy,
Right.
of negotiations, America is now back to the table. America
Right.
is now part of the global affair. And I'm happy
Right.
that just like Japan, just like China and India, they are now beginning to look at other sustainable means of ensuring
Right.
that the global crisis in terms of climate change does not put us in an questionable, sustainable, development target.
Right. I wanted us to further our conversation on international politics, but let me come to Doctor. I want us to just broaden the conversation. Let's look at China. China is the hub for everything in this world. They produce virtually everything. And I want you to just tell me, are they complying by the rules that should govern global warming?
Right.
China, yes.
So
I know when
what
it
is
comes to
happening
China, everybody's very sensitive. Yeah.
now? What is happening is that if you talk about the U.S., the
Yes.
U.S. do have between 4 to 6% of the world's population, but produces between 20 and 24% of the world's emissions.
Right.
All right. So having that small population and producing that much of the world population means that if you decide not to come on board, when the whole world is thinking about reducing these emissions in order to reduce climate change, it's quite sad. And I think the US said that, and it doesn't mean that they were totally going to do nothing to fight against climate change, right? The US believe in technological solutions. Okay,
Sure.
there are so many. They believe in addressing the climate change, issue using technology. Like the engine goes on a meeting, and so even though they were not going to be on the agreement, because the agreement is that you say I'm going to do this, and then you'll be monitored to do that. Okay.
Mhm.
So even though it was not going to be on board, it was still going to do something in its own merit to be able to, reduce climate change. You see, climate negotiations and climate change politics is a game theory. Okay, a game theory, it's just like look at it from an okay, all involved, and therefore depending only on nature, depending on the weather, where it is changing. We don't have technological solutions. So the impact is going to be more on us, and that is how we need to. So if you look at the climate change discussions, every country in the area of mitigation, when you do something, okay, you unilaterally spend your own resources, but the benefit goes to the whole world. Okay,
Right.
so everybody is looking at his cost and looking at his benefit. In fact, that's the reason why it has taken the world a very long time to come to a climate change agreement, because the game is a very unfair game that every country is trying to, one of the reason why the China case is coming. If you like China, for example, yes, their emission is also high, but their population is also high. So if you look at the emission per capita, right, you can see that in the US, very high, but in China, it will be very low. But the question is, do you allow that to go on? So there are imperfections. There are imperfections when it comes to these negotiations, and that is why the nationally determined contribution has come back on board, where every country has taken its cost and benefits and has been able to do something that that country can do in its own merit, right? No one is forcing you. Okay, you tell us what we are going to do, how you're going to do it. So producing climate change agreement every 5 years. So we all say we are going to do this. We monitor it and implement it for 5 years. We come back to it, reassess what we have done, look at who is suffering, who is doing more, readjust it, and then we go on. So this is the only way. So
Right.
we call this one a repeated game. Where we play the game, we
Right.
go back. So that's why it's a very complex game, extremely complex
Right.
game that every country is trying to play.
Right. Very interesting subject matter, which means that I will have to have you guys back on this show, because there are a lot of questions that I would like to put before you. But last but not the least, let me just make room for 2 questions. Then we can call the show off, because time is fast spent. I know we've all agreed morally that we have to try our best to make sure we have a seat in the presidency. The seat in the presidency to champion climate change. And when it comes to rebuilding of the country, I mean, construction, etc., we should always have somebody who has knowledge about climate change to address. I mean, looking at pavements, gutters, buildings, even air conditioning system. It's like we can do anything without having an expertise of climate change on board. Now, let's look at deforestation in Africa. Ghana and Africa, we've realized that this is going on. It has been going on, even pro-independent and now independent. What can we do to stop this? What can we do to stop this afforestation? Because it looks like decision is all mostly political. This goes to Cedric. Will you take this one? Cedric.
Yes. Yeah. It is important to create the connection of how forestry, supports our climate. And when, I keep making the point about the micro level, because most importantly, it is the people who are the vanguards of every country. So when the people
Cedric? Well, I think Cedric's signal has gone down, and this do happen, especially because we are living in a new dispensation now. That in the old folks, we had to take the interviews in the studio, but now we are doing it in the comfort of our homes. Dr. Daniel, would you like to say something small about that before we close?
Right, that's fine.
Yeah.
I've had the opportunity to look at the National Forest Master Plan and the harvest system that was established by the colonial masters, right? And if you look at the plan that was put there to harvest our forest, and harvest sustainably, right? So you give a concession, you know all the trees in there, there are specific trees you need to cut. That concession, you go there into the forest, you come back in the next 10 years, by 10 years, there is, regeneration, and then you take it. That's how we all know what it's supposed to be. The system, transparency, and, corruption, and things that are like, they are so much embedded in our system at all levels that it's very difficult to do whatever. I see some of the things, you put forest guards here, you do that, these are all things they're having some impact. The impact they are having is quite minimal. And that is why if you look at the current forest policy, it is now shifting from using, forest as the timber being the main focus to, total forest conservation, looking at the, what do you call it, I've forgotten the right word to use, looking at, conservation and ecosystem conservation in general, not only timber, okay? So in so doing, we will be able to put emphasis on the other components or non-traditional, products of forest, which is quite beneficial. National forest plantation has been going on for the past 2 decades, right? Where forests are, how they are being come on how the new forestry plan would help us forest on rotational basis and sustainably. Unfortunately, we've not been able to do that, and we are now even importing, forest. The last time that we wrote a work with the Institute of Environmental and Sanitation Studies, all our environmental indicators are going down. There is no one single environmental indicator that is improving in Ghana. All the environmental indicators are going down. So what it means is that, all the environmental indicators. So what it means here is that, what are we thinking about sustainability, right? Making sure that the next generation will be able to have the sort of, resources that we have today. Of course, if you look at how we grew, it is not important what we leave them, but the opportunities, right? We are exploiting forests. Maybe we are using it to develop our digital wealth so that our generation, even though they are not going to have forests, they are going to have a digital wealth, right? So turning one capital, environmental capital, to, let's say, technological capital. But what the rate? Most of the cases, benefits are coming to us. The benefits are going to other countries and making it difficult. Look, this country has mined gold for 100 years. Go to Obuasi, go to Takwa, and see what is there. What can we account for it? So it's hard time that we begin to think sustainably. Politicians are there sometimes only 4 years, they'll go away, is all what they think about, but not the long-term development, which is, quite sad.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mr. Doctor. That was very specific. And then sustainability, the next generation. What kind of legacy are we going to leave for them? And I just want to say thank you so much. I know the invitation was just sudden, but you made it a point. And I just want to say that I pray that next time and I call upon you, I will do it in advance, and then I'll give you more time. And then I know definitely you will come again. And then we'll both try to change this world. And Cedric, I just want to say thank you so much for also coming. You are a young guy coming up and an ambassador traveling from nations to nations, having symposiums, talking to great men all over the world. I just want to say, keep it up. And then I know when I call upon you once again to come over to explain to us how far we have diminished this world, you will be there to talk. Ladies and gentlemen, today's political affairs. Thank you, Mr. Daniel. Today's political affairs have been about climate change, and it's a matter of global concern now. In the studio today, we have these great personalities. The first one was a young man called Cedric Zelu from Ghana, Africa, a young climate change ambassador, and who travels from countries to countries, continents all over, having symposiums and having meetings. And then our great father, Professor Dr. Daniel Kwabena Chirefo, who is an environmental economist who will take us through 15 minutes of details of how we are damaging this world, and then the remedies concerning how we can bring this world into a beautiful place. My name is Martin Pettigo, and once again, this is Political Affair telecasting live stream from Pennsylvania, United States of America. We went on sabbatical leave for about 2 months. We are back. Please stay tuned, subscribe, press a like on this program, and ciao. God bless you.